Well, hello, everybody on a summer day. We're excited about today's topic, and I had to rehearse saying minimalism over and over again. This is a topic on minimalism. I had to write it out. I don't know why I have a hard time with that word, but I don't think I'm the only person, even though I love that word, and it's something that I strive to do in my life, not only with my photos, but all parts of my life. It's an ongoing effort, I think, for all of us. So today we're going to talk about the idea that less is more with technology, especially when we're talking about our photos, right? It means letting go of the digital clutter and focusing on the images that truly matter. Instead of saying that, we're curating our memories, let's actually enjoy them and share them in meaningful ways. And we have an amazing speaker to do that with us today, Carolyn Gunther. She has been a member of the Photo Manager since 2014. She lives in both Chicago and Sweden, travels extensively, does a lot of really interesting things in her life. She's a certified photo manager, and she's also an organizing and productivity coach that actually many professional photo managers have used her coaching, and she's a great teacher for us and does a lot of amazing work. Has some great courses on our Photo Manager Academy, which are all on sale right now. So please check that out if you are unaware of that. And before we jump in, just we'd love to have you subscribe. It's important for us to continue to grow this channel, bring you great content. So we'd love to have you join and subscribe. So come on, Caroline, and join us. Welcome.
Hi, Kathy. Thanks for having me.
Glad you're here. We decided to make this a conversation for people today, a little bit more than a presentation, and because it's more engaging, we think. Yeah. So, Caroline, why don't you just jump in and talk to us a little bit about the problem that we have?
Yeah, and it's a big one, right? And when I travel, I talk to so many people, and everybody says exactly the same thing. I have so many photos on my phone. I have so many photos everywhere. What do? I feel completely overloaded. I feel completely overwhelmed. Where do I even start? So this is, if this is you, you're not the only one. It's a very common problem, no matter where you live, no matter what you do. And I just think that we've gotten so good at taking photos, which is great, but at the same time, the clutter is real, and we've gotten less and less discerning around what we take photos of. Nowadays you take photos a lot as reminders and just to remember what you want to, buy at Trader Joe's, or remember something that somebody said, or quotes or screenshots or this and that. And I think it's just become I don't want to say lazy, but you know what I mean, a sort of a different way of note taking that is kind of snowballing into its own problem.
That's a good way to think about it. Is like note taking, and in some ways we're documenting all our experiences. It is like it's like we're taking notes all the time. You know what? Just I noticed something the other day. I've noticed this lately quite a bit too. Is when you're out and about and you have somebody take a photograph for you of your friends, or say, you ask somebody. Everybody always, now they don't take one picture for you, right? Then some people will take 25 or 30 pictures for you, or they'll just, nobody just takes one, though. They do take multiple ones. And that alone is something that when we used to hand somebody a camera with film in it, right? They would never have taken, that would have been your whole camera roll.
You had one shot.
There, right?
You had one
shot to get it right.
Yeah.
So that is also something that I think just adds to the problem that we're all in.
That brings up something interesting, Kathy, because this is something I see in my coaching. We actually talked about that on a call yesterday that I was doing with my students. It's the idea of being more and more insecure of your skills or of your note-taking, because it brings you into sort of a scarcity mindset of, oh, I got to get it right. And so you start to click multiple, like you said, the person who takes the photo doesn't want to make a mistake. They want to make sure they got the shot for you. And so they overdo it. And I feel like we do that now, and it makes us even more and more insecure about which photo was the right one. Or even if we take, let's say, a screenshot, sometimes we do more than one thing. It's like a way to remember and not feel pressure, but actually the opposite is happening.
Yeah, it's just adding to our, that's a good point. I like that. I agree. The person who we give the responsibility to take the photograph feels a tremendous sense of, and I used to, when it was filmed, right? You really felt it because, where everybody.
But you were more careful then. You were more careful. You would set it up and you would make sure and check lighting and this and that. And now it's like, oh, click, just in case. And I do feel like because we're so used to doing that, like that actually makes us less confident in our curation and photo taking skills on the flip side of it.
Yeah. I'm curious if anybody is joining us right now listening, if you have that same feeling of like if somebody hands you a camera, I mean hands you their phone, how many photos do you take? I definitely take, I don't take, I know better than taking 10 or 12. I do take probably 3 or 4. I will
Three or
move,
four for sure.
I will put be up high, down low, kind of I will do that for the person, and then I hand it back and I forget completely that that experience ever even happened, right? Um,
Yeah. But we've gotten
so
so used to doing that that now we do that for each photo. So we're multiplying several times.
yeah,
If before we took, 20 exposures, now we're doing 80 just by default.
right. And
Yeah.
and who's winning on that is really the storage, the amount of,
Yeah.
it's not in the best interest, it's not in the cloud companies are not interested in us becoming, you know, practicing a
No, no,
minimalism.
no,
I'm going to
minimalism.
use that
No,
word with that
exactly.
approach to our life, right? They want us to, more is better in their
Yeah.
perspective. So,
Yeah.
um,
And
yeah,
Kathy's in the chat saying I usually take a few from different angles. I think that's so common. Hi, Kathy, by the way.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so that's interesting. And then also, what are some of the other, I think the emotional and cognitive toll, right, of too many photos for people?
Yeah.
Again, I know it for myself, right, is a tremendous amount of guilt that I'm not keeping up with what I used to pride myself on, keeping my photo albums up to date as best I could. And
Yeah.
now it almost feels like it's such a big mountain to climb that I almost don't feel like I could even get on the
Yeah.
get started, right?
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest hurdle almost. It's not that you don't want to get organized or, curate your collection. It's just that it feels like such a heavy project. And where do you even begin? Because you had to, consolidate as well, not just curate. As we know as photo managers, there's a process to this, and
Mhm.
it can feel like a really, really overwhelming process to even start.
Right. How do you, when you're working with people, how do you help people think about that starting point? Like, what is your,
Yeah.
especially as a productivity coach,
Yeah, so what I teach is I always teach clarity on the system first. So I always start by teaching, and questioning what is the overall system that you're using, and could you explain that to me? Because a lot of the time when I ask that, people aren't clear on how their system works. So they might not be sure if something is syncing, or if they're moving something, if they're moving all of the photos, or they might not be sure about their backups or where photos actually live, which is so common. Do they live in the cloud? Do they live on your computer? Where are the resolution originals? So I usually explain to people first how their system works, or I help them work through that. And then once they have full clarity on their system, now we need, to take action. And by that time, they understand what needs to happen next, because they understand how photos are supposed to move from A to B. Without understanding your full system, it's very hard to understand how your photos are being used, or where they're being saved, and all of that.
that's such a great point about what is the system. And I bet you, I wonder if people here know if they could answer that question. And I think what we have to help people realize, it's not your fault that you don't know the system,
No.
right? Because I think there's this anxiety that we all feel like there's some magic button, or there was some, I missed the memo, or
Mm,
everybody else learned that at some point, but maybe I was sleeping through that class, or right, that moment in time. And I think that's really important for people to understand, that knowing how your computer works is not unusual. It's not, a lot of people don't
no,
really understand,
no.
right?
It's not something that you were taught necessarily in any specific place. It's kind of like you just kind of have to learn and pick it up as you go. But I think there's also some realization around the fact that a photo system, even though some manufacturers try, is not magically set up for you. You have to create that system. It doesn't just automatically show up. Apple does a great job trying. Obviously, if you buy an iPhone, they have Apple Photos, and the whole thing starts to sort of snowball on its own a little bit. But for most people, the photo system doesn't exist. So you have to intentionally design it yourself and set it up yourself. Where do you want your photos to be? How are you going to get them from where you're taking them, whether it's a camera or a phone, to your, photo space, where for your photo hub? And how are you going to back them up? And what are you going to use them for? Uh, that doesn't magically just create itself, that you have to intentionally design that. And I feel like a lot of people are just sort of pulled in based on their devices into whatever system that is the most common, but that doesn't mean it's right for you. That doesn't mean that it aligns with your goals. So you have to take a step back sometimes and think about, how do I want this to work? And how can I make the process easier for myself in the future?
Yeah, I'm curious for you, Caroline. I don't know the answer to this. How did you figure that out? Like, what was your turning point for you that you actually became an expert on this topic and this subject?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's interesting because I was a professional photographer for just a bit. And what happened is I was managing so many photo shoots that I actually got pretty good at keeping everything straight and organizing. I was shooting into Adobe Lightroom Classic at the time, and I became very good at sort of organizing photos that way. But I ended up with so many of other people's photos that I kind of forgot about my own. And then one day there was a bit of a tech crash, and I almost lost a photo. And then because I got lucky, I was able to do a sort of miraculous recovery effort and get that photo back, but that could have easily gone the other way. And at that point, I was like, okay, I need to seriously think about what my system is. How am I going to handle my photos? And I need to make time for my own photos, not just other people's photos. And then I started to figure out my own system, and it kind of snowballed from there. And that was, funny enough, a couple of years before I became an organizer.
What? Yeah, can you remember what year was
Yeah,
that?
that must have been, gosh, 2004 maybe,
Okay, yeah. So
something like that. Yeah,
uh,
I can't say for
yeah, that
sure, but
was yeah,
somewhere in the early 2000s. Yeah.
yeah. Kathy said she couldn't clearly articulate her digital system to you if you asked.
Yeah.
And
See.
yeah, I think a lot of people, and I agree. I think it's become a default. There was a time when we would buy cameras, right? And if you were Canon or Nikon, or at least those were the days when we would work probably within the system of whatever software or something that maybe came with our camera that we loaded onto our computer. And
Yeah.
when we were actually shooting digital, when we switched from analog to digital. But once the phone came,
Yeah.
that's when everything changed. And whoever imagined, if you really think about it, nobody expected our phones to be a camera. I mean, if you just went back in time 20 years right now,
Yeah.
and met somebody on the street 20 years and said what's in my hand will become the camera that you wouldn't believe, even just 20 years
No.
ago. It's amazing
No.
how fast
Yeah.
this technology change has happened.
It's incredibly fast, and I think the shift has been from, because the memory cards, for example, that we were
Yeah.
using, it was very obvious to us at the time that we had to move the photos and clear those out because we were going to reuse them again. But you don't think about that with your phone. The phone has become a storage
Yeah.
device for a lot of people. Whereas because I do this for a living, I think of it as a transportation system, just like with the memory cards, and I clean my phone out regularly.
Okay,
And
that's good. So let's
yeah,
talk about that for a minute.
yeah,
So I love that. So you think, and for those of you, if you have questions for Caroline, or you want to add some comments, like what do you think of your phone as, or what do you think of as your camera? So first of all, is your phone your primary camera?
yes.
Okay, so you're not carrying,
I
slinging
do
it around.
have cameras. It's just I just love my phone
Yeah,
at this
right,
point.
exactly. Those would do. And so
Yeah.
you think of your phone as the transportation device, not the
It's
actual.
it's basically the old SD card, and
Okay,
then it goes into. I keep about, I want to say, 1 or 2 months of photos, maybe up to a couple of months of the most recent, just because I'm on the go so much, and sometimes for my business I need to have access to things. But anything past a year goes into a permanent archive for sure. I mean, so it just kind of depends on the volume that I'm handling. But yeah, I think about it as a transportation system. It's not the storage device where I keep it.
yeah. And
Yeah.
are you where? So let's tell us what your process is. Just especially as somebody who is. Do you consider yourself a digital minimalist?
Minimalist? No, I don't actually, which is very
Okay,
interesting. No,
okay,
I don't. I love taking photos. I take a lot of photos, probably at least 3,000 a month.
okay. Oh wow, that's a lot. Yeah, that's
It's a
way more.
lot. Yeah, but I do call
Mhm.
regularly, and because I know what I'm doing and I know what I'm looking for, that process works for me. So I'm not scared of taking too much, because I have such a, I guess, regular way of dealing with this, because I know what I'm doing with this at this point.
So what is your
Um,
process? Yeah, help us.
but yeah. So the last, I want to say maybe 2-3 months or so, is on my phone, Apple Photos, because that's just the system that I like using on my iPhone at this point. It's easy and shareable and all of that. And then at that point, after I get to a certain amount, or when I feel like it's time, I move it over to Lightroom Classic and organize it there. That's from the photography days. That's sort of always been my go-to. But it's only when I don't need access to it. I permanently archive it and do all the metadata and all of that. But so I think about it kind of as a work in progress. The most recent month or two is work in progress files. And then when it's time to move it over, it goes into a permanent archive. Yeah.
And for people that you work with that aren't familiar, because they don't come from a photography background and they're not familiar with Lightroom Classic, and it might be intimidating to them, how do you help people? How do you help the average person think about using their phone as their transportation device as opposed to their
Yeah.
storage?
Well, I think it's just a matter of understanding what is your photo hub, like where does all of your photos live permanently, and why did you make that choice? I think if you can articulate that, that gets you further than most people,
Yeah,
actually.
I would think most people are, on the average person, if we did the average, survey on the street, most people would not have thought of it's, it's by default, right? If you're an
Yeah.
Android user, you're in Google Photos, right?
Yeah.
If you're a Apple iPhone user, you're in Apple Photos, and you haven't really given it much thought beyond
Right.
that.
It just kind of happens.
Until you try to break up with one or the other, and then you realize this is a lot harder than I thought. Or if you're an Apple user and you're somebody else in your family is an Android user, and you're trying to share your the photos back and forth, you realize this doesn't work very well either, right?
No.
So the system is
being able to articulate your system by far is the biggest investment that you can make. Because when you're clear on that, you know exactly what needs to happen, because you're clear on the workflow basically. And at that point it becomes a lot easier to manage. If you're not clear on the system, I think the photo overload is just a massive guilt trip, actually.
Yeah. And when you
Yeah.
use the word system, help some people that are listening that might not even know, what does that mean, like system?
Yeah. So if I ask a potential client, or a client, articulate your system for me, what I want to hear is, well, my photos are being taken on this device, and this device. From there, I move them to my photo home, which is on this device or this storage hub or this computer. That is backed up in these ways. When we adhere to the 3-2-1 rule. And then when I export or upload photos out of my photo home, I use them for books or for slideshows or for something else, prints. So what I want to hear is really a description of the workflow of where do photos come from, where do they go, how are they being backed up, and how are you using them?
Yeah, that's a great step. So again, if there's questions there, I'm just seeing some things that, like Kathy said, I use my phone and my notes app as my exo brain. It's an adaptive strategy she was taught by her OT. That's cool. I like that. Then she also says, I don't take as many photos from memories, but I have photos of different things to remember. So that's cool. She deletes those. So somebody else asked you, can you access a picture from 6 months ago?
Yeah, so that's a question you have to ask yourself, because for me, I don't necessarily need to access a picture from 6 months ago on a regular basis, right? So the question for your system is going to become, do you need access to all your photos always on the go? Or always, do you need to be cloud-based, essentially? For me, I don't need to. I need the last maybe 2-3 months at most. Everything else I can keep archived, and it's totally fine. But if you are somebody who needs access to everything and you want to see everything, then you really have to think of and be even more, I want to say, intentional in designing your system, because that gets real expensive if you're trying to, have a couple of terabytes in the cloud.
Right.
That can get expensive. So, do you have to have access to everything all the time? How are you using it? Basically, that becomes a question.
And if there's a photo from 6 months ago and you have your computer, you get it back home to your office or wherever, and
Yeah, I can have
computer.
somebody transfer it if I absolutely needed it
Yeah,
for an emergency or something, but I don't need to just have everything on my phone and show it to everybody all the time. I see it as work in progress and permanent archive. Like I
yeah.
said, for me, that helps.
And it's funny because that question about nothing's more frustrating, or I find myself, I'll do that. Like I want to show somebody a photo, right, or something that happened, and then I'm looking for it,
Mhm.
and they're waiting. We've all. I'm not describing
Yeah,
anything
scroll.
that we all have not done ourselves, right? So you want to show somebody a phone, and then you're looking, and then it wasn't as good as maybe I thought, or then you can't decide, do I hand them my phone so they can look, or do I hold my phone for them to look, or somebody does that to you, right? Oh, let me show you these photos, and it's not as fun as it used to be. It used to be so much more fun to look at photos, but looking at at least in my opinion, looking at other people's photos on their phone when they're handing me their phone, or you get distracted or something like that. It's not. We've missed. I think that's the disconnect for a lot of us. We're taking the photos, but we're missing the connection with actually viewing the photos.
With
And what is
looking
it that we want to see in a photo, or why do we want to look at? What are we trying to show somebody? So I'm curious, just to kind of chat about that a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, you can have, like, let's say if I did want to have a folder of favorite images or favorite memories, I could certainly have that. It doesn't have to be as rigid as, I cut it off at 3 months or 6 months or whatever it is. Like you can make adjustments. And yeah, and I do. I mean, I have considered having access to everything on the go. At this point, I just don't need it. But I think we are all moving in that direction. So that's going to be really interesting as well, and I'm curious as to how that is going to, impact our backups and our workflows going
Yeah, and
forward.
of course AI. As we all
Hmm.
know, AI is. There's a lot of complications with AI, right? It solves a lot of problems and it creates a lot of problems of
Hmm.
the ability to take, to change your photos, or get access
Hmm.
to other people's photos in ways that it's going to help us find probably photos easily. But there's a lot of other factors like privacy and things like that. How do you think
Yeah.
about privacy in terms of who has access to your photos, right? And
Yeah.
posting on Facebook, or
Yeah. For obviously photos of like my family and all of that, I'm much stricter rather than when it's business photos,
yeah,
because it's a different purpose. Um, but I'm just very sort of careful about the services I use and what they're adhering to, in terms of privacy, uh, you know, and in their subscriptions.
yeah. Do you look at the fine print of the
Hmm. Hmm.
subscription, of what we're
Hmm.
saying yes to, right, and what we're saying
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Um, that's important. And I right, since I know you, yeah, I see your business photos, and I know your daughter's getting ready to go off to college, and
hmm.
I've seen a handful of photos of her over the year, but you do not post a lot of photos
Not a lot. No,
of your daughter.
no,
I
no.
don't. I couldn't. I wouldn't recognize her probably as an adult right now. I think because you're careful. I'm sure that's
It's hard enough for me. She's growing up so fast.
Oh yeah, right. You don't want to. And yeah, has that been a conscious decision on your part, though, not to
Yeah.
post many photos of your of
Yeah, they're not, online business owners like me. They don't really need to be that visible. They share whatever they want to share. But yeah, I keep that, down and let them have a lot of input in all of that. Like for me, I love being online. I love posting online and this and that, and I do that a lot for my business. And that's just the way that I express myself and have fun and market and all that. So for me, it's not as big deal. And in fact, I would prefer that more people see it. So for me, that privacy
right.
issue isn't there. It's only when it's private photos and things like that that
Yeah.
I keep. Yeah.
Um, let's see. What else do I want to talk about a little bit? Is we had like a detox program for your digital photo clutter, kind of.
Yeah.
So you have like 5 steps here. If you want to take us through the 5 steps of
Yeah.
the detox program.
Yeah, and actually the first thing that you can do is really think about why you're taking the photo in the first place, because it's kind of like with junk mail, does it really need to come into the house, or can you kind of stop it at the door somehow? And that's kind of how I how I think about photos as well. Is like the more you can curate before it even hits your camera roll, the better. So if you can be more intentional with your photo taking habits, either how how many photos you're taking. Like we said, do you need to take 4? Or if you do take 4, can you delete 3 right away and decide right there? How can you be more intentional? Do you have to take that screenshot, or can you make a note somewhere else? I know a lot of people use the Notes app because you can take a photo and attach a photo to the Notes app, for example, without it going into your camera roll. There are several apps out there that you can use a system like that, where you can actually, let's say, attach a reminder as a photo, but it actually stays out of your camera roll altogether. So that would be great. So is there a different note-taking system that you can use? Or can you put a reminder directly on your calendar rather than to take a photo of, your appointment card or something? You know what I mean? Like, how can you be more intentional as a first step about your photo taking habits so that you don't have as much to deal with on the back end? That's number one. And somebody in the chat said, I sort of curate as I go whenever I have a free moment. And that's really great. If you can pick a burst shot and get rid of the rest, if you can, curate, if you can declutter, deduplicate as much as possible upfront, that really helps cut down. I mean, if you just think about, instead of taking 4 photos, you take 1.
Yeah.
Now you've cut it in, like, 25% is what you're keeping rather than the rest. So that stuff is upfront, sort of being more intentional, is huge. And then, of course, even when you get to have photos, in your photo home, can you declutter more often? Can you sort of weed out what you don't need? And be more intentional about what you keep and curating. I tend to recommend getting rid of at least 50%. I tend for myself to keep about 30% of the photos that I take. So if I take 1,000, I tend to keep about 300
Yeah.
every single month. It's not a perfect ratio, but I cull very heavily. And I'm not afraid to take photos up front because I know that when they get to my photo home, I am going to cull. If I was just,
Do you call in Lightroom, or do you do it on your phone before you import?
I actually do it in Apple Photos before it even
Okay.
gets to that point. Yeah. But sometimes, I mean, I know for some people, and depends on your system, and your preferences, but sometimes it's much nicer to see it on a big screen. So sometimes you do need to put it on a computer or on a bigger screen just to be able to see which photo was actually the better one,
Yeah.
because it depends on how big it is and all of that. But yeah, if you can get those habits a little bit more intentional, that is a tremendous step, And then, of course, when you cull, you want to think about, does this photo tell a story? Is this something I need to pass down? What is the context that makes this worthy of my archive? Because I want to leave a legacy. I want to leave an intentional uh, storyline, and not just a bunch of clutter for the next generation to think about. And actually, my co-coach Amy, who I work with every time, she has a really great system that I always like tell people about. She calls it a DUD system. So DUD, like DUD, but for her it actually stands for delete upon death. So
Oh,
she has a bunch of tags like that says dud, and basically it's for her to enjoy, but then she has them marked for deletion, like for when that time comes, so that
so
it
that
can,
okay, that's a great
it's
way.
really fun. Yeah.
That's a fun way of thinking about it. Right. She's keeping them because she wants to,
Yeah.
but she
But the
keeps
next
like the
generation
family.
will not
Next
need
generation,
them.
please.
So
That's like I call
yeah.
it the B photos. Like, put them
The
back in the box
Yeah, that's kind of
with a
fun.
note. If I pass away and you inherit this box of photos, you have my
Yeah.
permission to throw them
Yeah,
away.
exactly. I think that's really cool, and that's a way you can cut down as well,
Yeah.
And then and then making sure that you actually tell the story of the photos that do matter, even if it's a couple. It doesn't have to be every single photo, but um, even if you just pick 10 of the top photos in your camera roll or your archive and told the stories of those 10 photos, that would still be way better, than it would still leave a pretty good story, if you were careful with selections.
Which is what people really. One thing that I've learned to keep in mind in my own photo taking process is that I like taking photos as a creative outlet. Like,
Mhm.
I used to be into photography and stuff, and I still am. But so I know when I'm taking pictures of sunsets, or, it's a beautiful summer day, and I know I'm going to delete it, but I still want to take it because I enjoy the process of capturing that moment. But I've learned to like give myself permission.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to go to the beach Saturday. It's supposed to be a beautiful day, and if it's what I'm picturing, right, blue sky and the ocean and the waves, and I'm going to want to take a picture of that. I know I am. But I've got lots of pictures of the beach that look like that. So,
Yeah.
within a few days or a week or so, I'll go in and delete that photo. But at the moment, I'm taking it because I want to take that picture at that moment, right? So
Yeah.
I think giving ourselves permission to take photos of certain things, knowing then, yes, you're going to probably delete it later, and that's okay if it's
That's
a
okay.
creative outlet for you.
Yeah. But there's also a flip side of that, I think. And maybe not with sunsets and beaches so much as maybe events.
Mhm.
And I think it brings up the idea of how present people are
Yeah.
versus how present they're not. Because, I go to a lot of concerts, for example, and I mean, there's not a hand that doesn't have a phone recording the entire thing. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it brings the idea in of, are they actually watching it on the screen, or are they actually there and enjoying it? So I think it depends on the intention behind it as well, because I think a lot of people kind of forget to be present
Oh,
because of that.
absolutely. I mean, yes. Presence is increasingly more and more difficult
Hmm.
place to be in our lives, right? And it's something we have to
Hmm.
make really conscious decisions to be more present. I think the good news is the conversation is shifting in the culture, where I think the fact that we're saying these things that where we didn't know this 5 years ago or 4 years ago was
Right.
creeping. It's been creeping up on us, but there's definitely a increased knowledge on our part that we need to be that put your phones down. Or I think parents of younger children, mine are not young anymore, but when I have grandchildren, I know already that I will not be allowed to post any photos of ever online of grandkids. I just know the opinions that my young adult kids have at this point. Not all of them, but the ones that
Yeah.
particular ones does. Maybe because they know a lot about how photos can be manipulated and used
Yeah. And
against
I
them.
think people are becoming increasingly sensitive to that as well. And actually, I see Dion posted in the chat, and she says, I see young parents are thinking about posting children's photos very differently than we did. And I think that's very true. And I also think that a lot of people, especially younger generations who have grown up sort of with cameras always being on them because of this phone thing, they are more sensitive to being on camera sometimes. And like for me, it's so easy, especially when I'm out and about and I'm meeting people. Like I always want to take pictures of everybody, and I can do it to a point where it annoys people. I'm just so excited about my photos. Um, but I always ask permission nowadays. Is it okay if I post this photo? Is it okay if I tag you? Is it okay if you're, unless it's at a very public event and people have that expectation that if they show up, they are going to be on camera or being, posted or about. I think you have to be very careful nowadays with that because a lot of people do not want to be online as much. They do not want to be tagged. And so you kind of have to be a little more careful. I used to always assume, but I can't do that anymore.
No, I think that's a healthy movement in the culture to
Yeah.
that recognition of that, right? Where because
Yeah.
I used to get annoyed when my sister-in-law used to post, she would tag me, and I might not have looked very good in the photo. I've gotten over that now. I mean, you kind of know that some
Well, we're
days
so self-critical.
better than others, but still, I used to get really annoyed that like, why are you doing that? Like, I don't want that picture of me posted,
Yeah.
And so another thought that we had here too is like the idea of passive scrolling with meaningful engagement. So how do
Yeah.
we engage more meaningful with more meaning with the
Yeah.
photos that we have?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we're also used to scrolling because we have so much now, especially on our phones. We get used to the scroll and we kind of forget that it's not supposed to be that way. Like, and sometimes that's why I still encourage people to print photos. Like, I don't know if you can see now, I have like 2, 3 giant photo walls in my office here because I do still like prints. I do still like to have photos framed. And it gives, right here, for example, like it just gives me a lot of joy to actually have a tangible photo in my hand and actually use them for something. So I think if you can create more meaning around how you use your photos, that helps. Even if you don't make photo books or slideshows, you could still print. You can still look at them much slower. Take your time, add the stories. Um, pick one photo and tell the story of it to a kid or, a family member, or, and just have more, use them as a bonding tool rather than just sort of aimlessly scrolling,
Yeah. I mean, there's no question that I think Fuji just did a big study too about the value of photos, the
Yeah.
printed photo, holding a photo book in your hand, or the tactile experience of looking at photos still brings a lot more joy than scanning through photos on your phone. It just just does, right? That's what I was saying. In the creation of a photo book, where you have to think about the trip that you took or the story that you might want to tell about that. It requires you to put some time aside to do it, but it's so rewarding to get that book in the mail.
I think a lot of us need like that creative outlet. I don't think we have enough creativity left actually in our lives. We need a lot more creative outlet. And if you think about, why photos came about, it was to tell a story,
Yep.
and it doesn't have to be that, you have to be a photojournalist in order to tell the story of a photo. That's what it's meant for, So I think as an outlet, we should all sort of be encouraged to do that a lot more and complete the process. Not just take the photo. That's just one piece of it.
Right. There was a good study I saw. I might not be saying it perfectly, but why are I think is Denmark the happiest country? And I don't know if it was Denmark, but one of those countries. One of the things that they felt was that they engage in a lot of still hobbies, whether it's quilting or, needlework or whatever. And I think
any creative outlet, really.
Yeah, creative photo books, creating. I used to scrapbook, and I used to love the experience of scrapbooking. For me, when I used to help a lot of people scrapbook. I used to walk around thinking, it's not about sitting around just cutting your photos in cute little shapes and adding colored paper, even though that was a really fun part of it. That was a creative outlet. It was a community experience sometimes with other people. You were touching something. It was tactile. You were, your brain was relaxed, in a relaxed state, because it was creative, but you were, usually if you're doing it around other people and you're chit-chatting kind of and eating, probably unhealthy food or whatever for the most part.
Yeah.
But that to me is a really important, something that's been a real lack is with digital. And I think hopefully we'll see, I think we're seeing an increase in more printing, and printing companies are actually seeing printing coming back because people realize that that's really important.
Yeah. It's almost the same as how I feel about the vinyls. Remember how vinyls went away for a long time, and now all of a sudden there's vinyls everywhere? I think people really miss that tangible stuff sometimes.
Well, the same thing with there's such a big growing movement towards film cameras, like the young generation buying film cameras and then having the film printed. Then they have to scan it so that then they could post it, which is really
my daughter's doing that actually.
Okay,
my daughter has gotten my mother's old camera, and that's the one she's using, and she's buying film and taking pictures, and she has a certain number and she wants to get it right, and then she has them developed.
And then does she have them scanned? Then does she
has them developed into digital images.
Oh, okay.
So it's the opposite. So instead of doing print that she scans, she has them developed to digital, and then she can print them if she wants to.
Yeah.
But she really is enjoying that. She really is.
And that slower process of taking the photograph. So we have any other questions or thoughts, comments that have come in here as we've been sharing this conversation?
That's Kim is saying something interesting as well. Let me just read that first before I get to Teresa. So Kim was saying, I often wondered, what if Da Vinci had an addiction to a cell phone? That was just an interesting thought. What may have been lost, yeah. And then let's see here. Which one was up there after that, Teresa? Yeah. If we would like to access all photos, videos, do you have recommendations for cloud-based services? Yeah, there are so many good ones out there, and it just depends on, first of all, price point, privacy settings that you need. Is it a permanent archive? Is it a temporary archive? There's a few factors that go into it. But Forever is there, Keycloud, Dropbox. I mean, you could do iCloud. There's so many. You can do all of the Google Photos and all of that too. You just have to be more careful about settings and making sure that it's aligning with what your goals are. So it's not necessarily, without knowing sort of your needs, it's hard for me to recommend something specific, but you just have to kind of look at what you're looking for in terms of privacy and pricing and storage size and all of that.
I think a lot of consumers, they just go with the default, which is if it's iCloud or Google Photos, but there are good companies out there trying to address some of these things and creating, editing programs within their software, ways to go right to a photo book and things. So there's definitely some good things to
There's a lot. Yeah.
check out, but there's a lot.
Okay. Suzanne is saying, if you have duplicates of a photo in several locations, how do you know which one to keep? Yeah, exactly. So that's where the consolidation effort comes in, and what you have to figure out is, why is there duplicates basically being created in my system? You have to be able to answer that question, and being clear on your system and knowing where duplicates are addressed will help you with that consolidation effort. And then once you have everything consolidated, then you can now compare with either a deduplication program or, even just manually, depending on how much you have, which photo is the better version that you want to keep. But getting everything together in one place is sort of the first step to that. Otherwise, if you don't have things together, if you have things scattered everywhere, you just can't possibly compare in an efficient way.
We call that your digital photo hub. So the idea, best practice from as photo managers is we encourage our clients to. It's just like the hunt and gather with printed photos. It's the same concept. You want to gather everything into one so you can assess what you have. Same thing with your digital photos. Create a digital hub, even if it's an external hard drive on your computer to start. And if you have photos that were in Dropbox, if you have photos in Google Photos, which most of us do and did, or majority are in Apple Library, bring them into one place. And then when you do the deduplication, then it'll be easier to know which one how you're doing, because you have duplicates coming in from multiple places, right? So
yeah, exactly. Let's see here. Okay, Teresa, on iPhones, is there a way to catalog images and videos into albums and clear the main library section? No, because your main library is basically, you can think of it as a little bucket of photos, and all the albums are created based on criteria out of that little bucket. So you can remove a photo from an album, but if you clear the library, you have no photos left. All those albums would also be gone, basically, or emptied. The library, the main library is where all of your photos are housed, and then they're being put into different albums, based on metadata or some criteria that you have. So it doesn't work to do that. Yeah. Let's see. A lot of good comments.
Our memories, Danielle says, our memories are getting worse because we're storing our memories through the phone, and it's affecting the power of the brain.
Great point.
I so agree with that. I've been doing a little study for myself, just personally, on reading a book, because I just had some eye surgery. I'm able to read instead of a Kindle, which I had to use for a long time. I'm back to reading a physical book, and I'm observing. I used to be able to, I could read for hours.
Yeah.
When I was young, and now I find myself. I haven't done it yet, but I want to time myself. How long before I start to get agitated, almost itchy to look at my phone? And I think it's like 15, 20 minutes. I mean, I have enough history about my own concentration and ability to know that that's a much shorter time frame than it used to be. And so it's quite stunning. And even if we're aware of it, to change it is still, it's hard. I mean, I can acknowledge it and out myself kind of, and I'm imagining we all could, because I know they know how to wire. We're fighting against much bigger, wise devices than our brains are, right? They know how to get our brains. So it does take a lot of effort to make these changes.
Well, and we're also every single day so inundated with tech and so inundated with information that just doing more at the end of the day, just as a way to relax, doesn't really make sense anymore.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. It's different. So
yeah.
Well, I guess any other comments or questions? You can download Caroline's digital. There's some words that are always going to trip you up. Minimalism guide, checklist there, and have more information. But we really appreciate it. Again, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And Caroline, thank you so much. It's been a fun conversation. We decided it'd be more fun to just chat about it than to do a presentation and walk people through it. So It's good to talk about it. It's just good to
every time. Yeah.
have these conversations and talk to your family and friends about it tonight. Maybe ask, what do you think about your photos? What would you miss if if you lost everything? And how can we do something about that, right? Or can we think about now of an album that we want to make for somebody for Christmas or the holidays? So
Yeah. And it's just being intentional about photo taking and being intentional about your system and how you're using photos. Those few things will get you so far in dealing with this, at least from now on. And then you can always tackle the backlog later on.
yeah, we always recommend start today, start
Yeah.
current, and it's overwhelming to go back. So and then get new patterns set up, and then you can slowly keep going back, right? So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, good. Well, thank you, Caroline, and thank you
Yeah, you bet.
everybody that's joined us and for all your comments. We appreciate it, and we'll look forward to seeing you again in August. But in September, it is Save Your Photos Month. I'll just do a little plug. Every year, we'll be doing 2 YouTube live videos every week throughout the entire month of September, all about all different topics, but really about how important saving our photos are before. Now we know this has been a year of many disasters between floods and fires and hurricanes and things like that. So what can you do to be prepared with not only your photos, but your videos, your old analog photos, kids' artwork, your keepsake items that you care so much about. And so you're prepared. And so that's something that we're excited to bring to you. And so look for more information about that. So thank you, everybody.